nice and muddy, please. No problem, anytime. Wait for the rest of the group here. We should have 6. Should have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So, a truck. Okay. So this is my truck. This is Desiree. Yes, I've named my truck. Shoot me. Okay. I get a lot of crap about it, but you know, she's Desiree when she's misbehaving and Desi when she's behaving. Okay. So when you guys are doing your pre-trip, you're basically going to start where I'm going to start, which is the front of the truck. Okay. And how you do that pre-trip is completely up to you. As long as you're using the verbiage on that paper, it doesn't matter what order you go in. Okay? We don't care about that. We care about the verbiage. Okay? Now for me, I do it the easy way. I go top to bottom, left to right. Okay? So the first thing I see are going to be those yellow clearance lights. They're properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. They are the proper color and they're working. So anytime I see a light, that's the verbiage. Whether it's that light, or the light on the back of the trailer, it's always the same. PMS, CBD, proper color and working. Okay? So then I move down and I talk about my headlights. Talk about my low beam, my high beam, turn signal, 4-way flasher. You can group this section of lights. Okay? Properly mounted and secured, but not cracked, damaged, or broken. Proper color and working. Okay. Then we're going to talk about my lens, which is this plastic covering. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's clean. Okay. I don't want any mud or snow packed on here to impact the lights. So it's got to be clean. All right. And then you're going to say, I'm going to look underneath my truck to make sure there are no puddles or drips that would indicate a leak. Right. Because if a hose is leaking or a container is leaking, you're going to see it on the ground, right? So you're going to look for puddles and drips to indicate a leak. Okay? And then we're also going to talk about my truck isn't leaning to either side. And the reason we talk about that is if it starts to lean to either side, you have a couple of problems it could be. One, you have a suspension issue. You know, a broken shock, broken spring, or your load has shifted and has shifted the whole truck to one side or the other. Either one is going to be a problem for you going down the road. All right, so you want to say, I'm looking to make sure my truck isn't leaning left or right. Okay, and that's the front. So go ahead and go to that side.
Or a flat tire.
It could be a flat tire, yeah. She's a Desiree today, isn't she? There we go. All right. So, huh? Oh, no. So Freightliner gives us this wonderful handle to use. Okay. Rail says you can't use them. Again, it's all about safety. So you're going to lift from the side. Go ahead and step to the side for me. And you're just going to say clear and lift. Don't just flip it up. Guide it up. Okay? A couple reasons we do that. If you look, you'll see this has a strap on them on one on either side. It's got this shock absorber, and then there's a hinge right here. That is all that's holding that 600-pound hood on. If they break, and you're standing in front of it, or the wind catches it and forces those things to break, you're eating that hood. That's why, again, safety above all else. So we stand to the side. Okay? So, if there are other people around, yes, I would, especially when their students are here. When the hood is open, you cannot have the truck running at all. Okay? So if you're inside and the hood's open, you're stuck. You can't turn on the truck. Okay? That's rule number one. Rule that's pretty big around here is don't do that. Okay? All right. So we're going to talk about, again, I go top to bottom, left to right. No, that's not the only way to do it. It's just the way I do it, and I've been doing it for 5 years. I'm an old dog. So we're going to talk about our hoses. You're going to say my hoses on both sides are properly mounted and secure. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. And for me, because they're rubber, you're going to say they're not cut, torn, or frayed. Leaking. They hold a fluid, so not leaking. And then I throw on my clamps are tight at both ends. Now, anytime I talk to a hose, I say the same thing. Because there are some hoses, they want to hear about the clamps, and some hoses, they don't want to hear about the clamps. Well, rather than try to remember which hoses are what, I say the same thing for all my hoses. Properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, or broken, not cut, torn, or frayed, not leaking, and my clamps are tight at both ends. That way I don't have to remember which ones I don't have to say, right? You can say more, you can't say less. And I have a caveat to that. You can't say more if it's going to be dumb. I'll give you an example. I was giving a guy a free CDL test, and he was doing these little critters right here, the lug nuts. And he said everything right, and then at the end he goes, and they're not leaking. And I went, my brain literally went, what did he say? And I'm like, I think he said leaky lug nuts. So he became leaky lug nuts, okay? So at the end, when I gave him his grade, I was like, what exactly fluid do we put in these lug nuts? And he went, what? I said, you said they weren't leaking. You said it on every axle. Oh, they don't really leak. I'm talking about the fluid that comes out the back. Well, we talk about that separate. Don't call it leaky lug nuts. Okay, so he became leaky lug nuts, and when he passed his test, I was like, were they leaky lug nuts today? No, they weren't. All right, so again, you can say more, you can be more descriptive as long as it's appropriate for that part. You just can't say less, okay? So again, I always say all my hoses have clamps. Some of them do, some of them don't on your paper. Make sense? All right, so next thing we're gonna talk about is our exhaust system from the manifold to the tailpipe. You're gonna say it's properly mounted and secured, it's not cracked, damaged, or broken, it's not leaking, and there's no signs of soot that would indicate a leak. Okay, so you would look for black dust or gray dust, depending on the exhaust, to see if it's leaking, okay? So that's the big thing. The other thing is, I'm a toucher. Okay, I like to touch everything when I talk about it. You do not have to touch it. You just have to point. Like my hoses, properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, right? And the exhaust system, alternator. You don't have to touch it. I touch everything. I'm sorry, that's the only way I learn it is by touching it.
That's the alternator?
This is the alternator right here. That's our next piece. So the alternator is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. All my bolts are present. I'm going to check my wiring on the back, make sure it's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Not cut, torn, or frayed, and not corroded because it's an electrical wire, right? And it is belt driven, right? Which leads me to my belts. My serpentine belt, my fan belt, and my alternator belts are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken, not cut, torn, or frayed. And there's no more than a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of free play.
So which belt is what?
So this is the alternator belt, and this is the fan belt. Okay, they're both serpentine belts because they do more than one job.
And that's what I was reading about. It said you had to be able to indicate each serpentine belt.
So again, you don't have to on test day. They're just going to talk about it. You're going to talk about alternator, fan. You don't actually have to touch them. Just understand that there are two.
Yeah, there can't be any 1/2 to
no more than a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of free play.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's just something you're going to grab on a regular basis. Make sure it feels right.
Okay.
Okay, that's it on this side. Let's go to the other side.
They don't care about the windshield washer fluid or nothing?
Nope.
Cool. Not yet. That's in the inside.
Now, when you're doing your rail inspection, you are going to check that, right? You don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere with no fluid. On the inside, they talk about the washer fluid of adequate amount to make sure that it runs, but they don't say it has to have 1/2 gallon or whatever. You're not going to really talk about that on test day until you're inside the truck. Okay? So for me, again, top to bottom, left to right. Coolant reservoir, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not leaking because it holds the fluid. Because it's a container, I'm going to talk about the fluid inside. It's the proper condition and color because this can't be green. It has to be red. If it's any color other than red, somebody's loaded you up with the wrong stuff and your truck is going to overheat and blow a gasket. Okay? Has to be red. It has to be between the add and full lines. All right? Because it has a cap, the cap has to be present, tight. Okay? Makes sense? So you're going to talk about your oil filler, which is this guy here, and your dipstick, which is this guy here. Kind of group those together. Say they're properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. They're not leaking. My cap is present and tight. I'm going to check the condition and color of my oil and make sure it's between the add and full lines. Okay? The air compressor. You follow these lines back in this way, you're going to run into your air compressor. You're going to say my air compressor air lines. Properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not leaking because it holds air. You're going to mention that it's gear driven. Okay? Then you're going to talk about these hoses the same way you talk about those hoses. My hoses are properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Not cut, torn, or frayed. It's not leaking. And the clamps are tight on both ends. Okay? Power steering pump. If you follow this hose through the frame here, right about in here is the actual power steering pump. You really can't see it. Okay? So you're going to say power steering pump. Just point that direction. Power steering pump. Properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Holds the fluid, so it's not leaking. And it's gear driven. Okay? Water pump. Properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. All the bolts are present. It's not leaking. It is belt driven. My water pump hose is the only hose you're going to talk about that's separate from the other ones. I don't know why they want it in Indiana. That's just the way they do it. We play their game. Okay? The water pump hose, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Not cut, torn, or frayed. Not leaking. Clamps are tight at both ends. Okay. Notice how I'm following a pattern here, just kind of just doing an S maneuver coming back, right? So let me get to this guy. This guy starts what I want you guys to start doing systems. You're going to do a steering system here, then you're going to do a suspension system, then the brake system, then the tire system. Again, this is the way I do it. It is not the only way to do it. You develop your system. Here's the key. Once you develop your system, stay with your system. Okay? That way you don't forget parts, and it comes, because on test day, what we have found is students get there and they're really, really nervous. But once they start getting into their pre-trip, their brain just goes, oh, like any other day. I'm doing my pre-trip, right? So it helps you get into that rhythm. You forget about that guy standing behind you with a clipboard. Okay? And the sooner you get that thought through your head, the easier this test is going to be on test day. The nerves kind of fall down a little bit. Okay? All right. So power steering reservoir. Properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Of course, it's not leaking. My caps are present and tight. It's between the add and full lines, and it's a proper condition and color of fluid. Okay? And then I just follow the parts and name them as they go. My low pressure hose, my high pressure hose. They are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken, not cut, torn, or frayed. They're not leaking, and I have clamps that are tight at both ends. You can tell this is a low pressure hose because it has a finger clamp here, but if you look at the high pressure hose, you can see it's got a bolt-on type clamp.
So
Okay?
this is the high pressure,
This is low
pressure, and
high pressure.
You have to differentiate.
Yep. You have to say both of them. That way they know you understand there's two of them. Okay? From the hoses, you go right to your gearbox, power steering gearbox, which is this guy right here. Properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Holds the fluid so it's not leaking. Okay? Pitman arm, which is this guy right here. Properly mounted. I'm sorry? Okay. Pitman arm, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. That's all you have to say for that one. My drag link is this bar right here. You're going to say my drag link, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken, and it's not bent. Basically, if any piece of metal that is longer from your fingertips to your elbow, go ahead and throw in there not bent. Because more likely than not, it needs to have, that's the specialty item for that subject. Okay? So just keep in mind, a long piece of metal, I'm going to throw in not bent because 9 times out of 10, it can't be bent. They may not call for it on the sheet, but again, we're talking about making it easier, right? So if you say it for every long piece of metal, you're going to be safe. That way you don't have to remember which ones say bent, which ones don't. Okay? So this is our drag link. Right here is our steering knuckle, where those two pieces of metal meet. So you're going to say my steering knuckle. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Okay? Now here's where I usually abandon the parts and I go to talking about these castle nuts and cotter pins, which there are 3. There's one on the pitman arm, There's one on the knuckle and there's one on the tie rods. Okay. I just talked about my castle nuts and cotter pins are properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken. They're not missing. Okay. The tie rod and tie rod end is this guy back here. The last bar back here in the back. Okay. You're going to say my tie rod ends are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's a long piece of metal because it goes from this side of the truck to the other side of the truck, so it can't be bent. Okay? That's the steering system. I just started at the top and worked my way down, calling out all the parts all the way through the entire system. Okay? So now I'm going to do my suspension system. And for me, the suspension system always starts with the frame. The frame and cross members from the front of the tractor to the rear of the tractor are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken because it's a big piece of metal. No illegal welds, not bent, and no illegal holes in this one. Okay? So my frame. Then I'm going to talk about my leaf spring mounts, front and rear. Properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Again, you have to say leaf spring mounts front and rear. If you just say leaf spring mounts, you get no credit. They want to know that you understand there's two of them. So you have to call them out, front and rear.
This one.
Now here's the front, the mount. And then the other one is back there in the very back. I can't reach it, but it's back there. All right. Then we have leaf springs, which are these guys right here. Leaf springs are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. They're not bent. They're not shifted, and they're properly aligned. Now, this truck happens to be one of the newer trucks in the training fleet. It has one leaf spring. That truck over there will have two. All right, some of the older trucks have two, which is why they say not shifted, properly aligned. This one just happens to have one. Okay. Mr. Flores' truck is identical to this one, which is why I brought you guys over to my truck. Okay, so it's identical to this one. So it's just going to have one, but unfortunately, we still have to say the verbiage, not shifted, properly aligned. Until all of our trucks look like this, they want to hear it, right? Because again, they're standing out there, they're not looking in here, they're listening to you. Okay, so just say not shifted, properly aligned. Okay. Then we're going to talk about our U-bolts, which are these two guys right here. They look like big giant U's. Right? Okay. So U-bolts, properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. Our shock absorber is this guy right here. Shock absorber, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not leaking hydraulic fluid. This is one of those things where they specifically want to know when it's not leaking. Okay? So that's my suspension system. Started at the front, worked my way back, didn't miss anything. Okay? The next thing we're going to talk about is our brake system. Starts with this guy right here at the top. It's our brake hose. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Not cut, torn, or frayed. It's not leaking because it holds air. And my clamps are tied at both ends. It's the same thing I have said for every hose in this engine compartment. If I just say that for everyone, I don't have to remember which ones say clamps and which ones don't. Okay? Huh?
Properly secured.
Yep, properly mounted and secured. Everything's going to be properly mounted and secured. So that leads to this guy right here. That's our brake chamber. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It holds air, so it's not leaking. And this one's very specific. They want to hear it's not dented. And the reason for that being is inside is a spring. All our brakes are spring loaded. The pressure fills into that chamber. It collapses the spring, which collapses the brakes away from the pads, or the pads away from the rotors in this case, or the drums. When we lose air, those things pop out. It immediately applies the brakes. Okay, so if it's dented, that could interfere with the spring working and cause you to have a brake issue. Okay, so no dents on the chamber. All right. This particular truck is different than most trucks, as this truck has rotors. Okay.
What?
This one has rotors. It is one of the first Freightliner models that went with the rotors instead of drums. Okay, so here you're going to tell the inspector this truck has rotors, does not have drums, so therefore it does not have a slack adjuster and push rod. If you do not tell them that, you will miss the slack adjuster push rod because they're listening for you to tell the slack adjuster push rod. Okay, so you're going to say rotors. As soon as they hear rotors, they're going to know they don't need to mark you off for the slack adjuster push rod. And for your rotors, you're just going to say properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken, and not cracked to the vent. Okay?
Where's the rotors?
The rotors are right here.
Okay.
Okay? So the rotors are basically two pieces of steel side by side. And basically when the brakes apply, the heat, that vent in the middle lets the heat escape so that it doesn't overwork the brakes.
So is that better than the brake drum?
I think it's a pain in the ass.
don't
I
see
really
that
don't
being
see.
better than the
I,
brake drum.
they say it's better stopping power. I don't buy it. I don't. I think it's just a way to sell this particular model different than International or Volvo.
It's easy to change the brakes on it too. That's why they was
Actually, you can't inspect the brakes on this truck. You have to take the wheel completely off to inspect the rotor and the drums. And you know how often maintenance wants you to take this wheel off? Never! So you can't do it. If they feel kind of weird or feel kind of, and again, trust me, I've named her because I have driven this truck for a while now and we've gotten really close. Okay? You're going to get to know your truck. If it has a new tick in it, you guys are going to be going,
Oh yeah.
I don't hear it. Why? I didn't. What's that? And everybody else will be going, sounds like a Freightliner. No. That tick, that one right there. That's not there. That's not supposed to be there, right? You're going to know everything about this truck. You're going to know how it feels on turns. You're going to know how the brakes feel when you start putting them on at a red light. And you're going to be like, brakes are spongy. I need to have somebody check my brakes, okay? That's how they do that. They'll pop it up and take the wheels off and check it out for you. The rest of the drums you can check, but this one you cannot, okay? So, rotors. Properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken, not cracked to the vent. And then you're going to talk about the brake pads. You might get away with brake lining, but I would go with the brake pads. Brake pads are properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken. They're not worn, dangerously thin. A visible amount should be showing, okay? That's how you say the brakes. All right, questions about that? So basically I went from the inside all the way to the outside. Again, just calling out the part and PMS, CBD, everything. Tire. For the tire, we talk about inflation, condition, and depth. Okay, so what you're going to talk about is properly inflated. That's all you have to say. The condition is you have no bulges or cuts, and the tread depth is a minimum of 4/32 in every major groove. Okay, this tire has to be 4/32. Every other tire on the truck has a minimum of 2/32. The verbiage is extremely important here.
The other tire got to be 4/36.
The verbiage is very important. Don't say no more than 4/32, and don't say 4/32, because then they're going to say, so if it's anything other than 4/32, it's an illegal tire. You have to say a minimum or no less than 4/32. All right, so that verbiage becomes very important. Make sense? So then I just work my way towards the middle. Okay, when I talk about my rim, it's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Big piece of metal, no illegal welds. Okay. My lug nuts, all are present, all are tight, none are missing. They are properly mounted and secure. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. There are no shiny threads or rust trails that would indicate looseness. So if this particular lug nut was to start to work loose, okay, water would get behind here and it would wash the rust down the back, and we'd have a stream of rust coming out of here. Or we would see these threads up here would look like they've just been put on. They'll have a shiny, clean spot, okay? So if you see those things, the lug nuts are having problems. You need to have your wheel checked, okay? So no shiny threads or rust trails that would indicate looseness. Inner and outer wheel hubs, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Hold the fluid so it's not leaking. And now, the most important part of this entire wheel assembly, the valve stem.
The what?
The valve stem.
The valve
It's the
stem.
number one thing people forget to talk about on these tires, and it'll hit you for 5 points. Okay? So keep that in mind. Valve stem, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not leaking because it holds air. My cap is present, tight, and you have to say that it's made of steel. You cannot have rubber caps, you cannot have aluminum caps, it has to be steel. Now, this particular cap is kind of neat because on the end, it'll allow you to take the air pressure without taking the cap off. It's got a little bead on the end, so you can get these at maintenance. I would grab I don't know, 4 or 5 of them and leave them in your truck because people steal these for whatever reason. I'm still trying to figure out why. They're not expensive for crying out loud, but damn owner operators.
That's what it is.
All right. So you need to know all of that, what I just did, by Friday in my truck. I don't know what John's rule is. When you guys get John tomorrow, ask him. Chris said we needed to learn all the way up to this light by Friday. Is that okay with you? And he'll probably say, Chris is too soft. So I want you to know what I'm about to show you, okay? I'm going to continue to go. We're going to try to do, I know it's 4:25. I'm going to try to do as much as I can because I want to get you guys back inside. But that's the major components. Here's the thing. If you know this axle, you know the rest of them. Okay? You know the rest of them. Once you know the suspension and the brake system from this set, you know the rest of them. There are a couple minor changes. The tires back there, 2/32. And we go from spring arm mounts to control arm mounts. That's it. Everything else, it has a U-bolt. It has shock absorber. We add a brake or air bag for suspension lift. But everything else is primarily the same.
Could you run us through that? The air bag?
Yeah, we're going to go back that way, yeah. So after you do that, you're going to come to this guy right here. This is a multi-function light. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's the proper color, and it's working. My mirror. Properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken, and it's clean. Okay? Then you're going to open up this door. You're going to say my door and door hinges are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. My inner seal and outer seal are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's rubber, so it's not cut, torn, or frayed. And you're going to say, and my door latches securely. My steps, properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's free of debris and will support my weight. Okay. Coming back here, this is a DEF tank. DEF tank. Okay. You're going to say my DEF tank is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. My cap is present and tight. It's not leaking. And I have a minimum of 1/8 of a tank of fuel in this tank. Okay. The DEF is diesel exhaust fluid. What it does is it combines with the fuel and burns it hotter and cleaner. Okay. This is how we get this little sticker right here. If you don't have that and you go to California, you can only idle your truck 5 minutes. After that, you can be ticketed. So that's why we have that. That's why we have this. It's an ammonia-based product. It's going to smell like pig urine. It mixes with the fuel and burns it hotter and cleaner, so it burns more efficiently, and we don't have that black smoke that comes out the stacks. Okay, you're still getting it. It's just not as bad as some of the Peterbilts, some of the older Peterbilts that look like coal being burned right out of the top. Some guys are into that sort of thing. This eliminates that dust problem. Okay. Fuel tank, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not leaking. My cap is present and tight. You don't have to take the cap off, but I'm going to. They want to hear about this chain. They're going to say my chain is present, properly mounted and secure, it's not cracked, damaged, or broken. And you want to talk about this seal on the inside of the cap. It's properly mounted and secure, it's not cracked, damaged, or broken because it's rubber, not cut, torn, or frayed. And then you're going to mention that your cap is on, tight. Okay. What's that?
The vent itself, right?
I didn't hear you.
The vent itself, right?
It will vent itself, yeah. All right. So coming on back here in the back of the tractor, you're going to talk about your air lines and your air hoses, or electrical lines and air hoses, from the back of the tractor to the front of the trailer. Now, I usually break them up and talk about my air lines first. Air lines from the rear of the tractor to the front of the trailer, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Not cut, torn, or frayed. It's not leaking. My electrical line from the rear of the tractor to the front of the trailer, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not frayed or corroded, okay, because it's an electrical line. My catwalk and steps, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's free of debris and will support my weight. Okay, sound familiar? Sounds just like your steps, right? Again, just trying to keep it universal. The drive shaft, which is inside there, it's actually two drive shafts. There's one here, hits the transfer case, and there's another one going back to the back tire. So you're going to talk about your drive shaft. Properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. And the U-joint appears secure. So I asked one time, I said, what does a bad U-joint look like? And they said, well, if it's on the ground, that's a bad U-joint. I'm not mechanically inclined. I don't know what appears secure. I'm assuming it's all in line, so it's attached. So that's what they want to hear. It appears secure. That's the magic phrase. The torsion bar or torque rod, which is this bar right here. There's actually two. There's one here on this axle, and there's another one right here on this axle underneath. You can't get to it, can't see it, okay? But that's what it looks like. And all it does is keep the torque from the drive from twisting the frame of the trailer. Okay, that's why they call it a torque rod. Torque rod with bushings, properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. Yeah, it's a long piece of metal, so it's not bent. Okay. Brake hose, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not cut, torn, or frayed. It's not leaking, and my clamps are tight at both ends. My brake chamber is this guy right here. Properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not dented and not leaking. Okay? This one is probably 4 times as big as the one on the front axle. Okay? This one does have a slack adjuster and push rod. It's behind the chamber. You cannot see it from out here. You have to be actually underneath the truck to see it. I will show you what a slack adjuster and push rod looks like at the back of the trailer when we have a chance. Okay? But you're going to say my slack adjuster push rod with clevis and cotter pins, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken. It has no more than 1 inch of free play and no less than a 90-degree angle. The reason they add that no less than a 90-degree angle is because of the way it's constructed. That spring inside is really, really strong. So even if it's broken, you may not be able to pull that 1 inch. So they want to see that 90-degree angle, and we'll see that when we're back in the back of the trailer, okay? That's slack adjuster push rod. On the inside of the drums, or inside of the tires, is the brake drums, okay? We've gone from rotors to drums now. Brake drum, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. No illegal welds. Brake lining, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken. Not worn, dangerously thin. A visible amount should be showing. Okay, then you're going to move out to these tires. First thing I talk about is this space in between. This is called bud rim spacing, B-U-D-D rim spacing. All you really want to hear, want to hear is that it's free of debris and the tires aren't rubbing. Okay, then you're going to come out to this tire. You're going to say it's properly inflated. There are no bulges or cuts, and I have a minimum tread depth of at least 230 seconds in each major groove. My rim, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. No illegal welds. My lug nuts, all are present, all are tight, none are missing. They're properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken, and there are no shiny threads or rust trails that would indicate looseness. My axle seal, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken, and it's not leaking. And then, it must be up here top,
Right here.
my valve stem, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not leaking. My cap is present, tight, and made of steel. Okay. My suspension system, control arm mounts, front, and the rear one is actually underneath the airbag. It's kind of holding up the airbag like this. So you're going to say my control arm mounts, front and rear, properly mounted and secured, but not cracked, damaged, or broken. My control arm is this guy right here. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not bent. My U-bolts, properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. Shock absorber, properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not leaking hydraulic fluid. And then my airbag, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not cut, torn, or frayed, and it's not leaking. If you stand right here, you will see the entire suspension system calling it backwards. So you just go from the front and work your way back. You'll never miss a part on the suspension system. Okay? Once you've done this axle, you'll walk to this axle and say, I would do this axle the same way as I inspected this axle. Okay? That's how you're going to do it on the test. That way you don't have to inspect this entire axle. Okay? Yes, sir.
When are you going to cast up the badges? Is that tomorrow?
I'm sorry?
The badges. Swipe cards.
What about them?
Do you plan to get those up tomorrow or Wednesday?
That's a gym question. Probably Wednesday is usually when we do that.
One of your students kind of needs it soonish. She needs a loaner card to go to the post office.
Oh, okay. Will she need it well, she won't need it tomorrow. They're mailing it from Maryland now.
Well, she's got to mail something to Maryland so they can open the PO box and it's going to get mailed back.
Tell her to drop it off at the hotel desk. Or give it to Amanda and let Amanda mail it off for her tomorrow.
Can we go through Amanda?
Yeah.
Try that way.
Yeah. Just have her give it to Amanda. Amanda will send it out tomorrow's mail.
Okay.
All right, so I would inspect this axle the same way as I did this axle. Okay, that's how you get around that. The rear of the tractor is back here. So you're going to talk about your mud flap, and that front piece of plastic is the splash guard. Okay, mud flap, splash guard, properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not cut, torn, or frayed because this is kind of a rubber, hard plastic rubber or vinyl, and that's what they want to hear. We'll talk about this DOT tape. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not ripped or torn, and it's clean and reflective, which of course Desi is not. She's filthy. All right. Then you're going to talk about your lights. You got your turn signal, four-way flasher, running lights, and turn signal, brake lights. Excuse me. Properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, damaged, or broken. Proper color, and they're working. My reverse light. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's a proper color, and it's working. This model year is the first year they have dropped the tag light on the Freightliners. Okay? All the other Freightliners have a tag light right there. This model year they decided to get rid of it because nobody puts a plate on the back of their tractors anymore. Okay? So there's no reason to have a tag light, but you still have to call out the tag light. Properly mounted, secure, it's not cracked, damaged, or broken, it's proper color, and it's working. You can group those lights. You just say them all at one time, and then say properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, or broken, proper color, and working.
How would I say it? How would I say it?
You group it, just say my reverse light, turn signal, four-way flasher, brake lights, running lights, and tag light. Properly mounted and secure, it's not cracked, damaged, or broken, proper color, and working.
Awesome. Sounds good.
So yes, you can group the lights. I don't. I got in the habit of individually talking about them, and that's just the way I've done it ever since. Okay? Again, develop your own system and go with that system. Okay? Let's go on to the back of the trailer. I want to show you what a squawk adjuster push rod would look like.
What was the brake drums?
Brake drum is a big piece of metal. It's about this big around, and all it does is the brake lining presses up against the drum, and that's what slows the brakes
No, I
down.
mean, where was it?
Oh, they're inside this tire.
Oh, they're inside
Yeah,
the tire.
you'll need a mirror and a flashlight to actually inspect it.
Oh, so will I do that on inspection day?
No. On the test day, you're just going to talk about it.
Okay. So
I had a student who put his hands in his pocket and did the entire test with his hands in his pocket.
Did he pass?
He memorized the entire sheet. He was perfect. Until I said, "Where's your water pump?" And he had no idea where the water pump was.
I meant
So-
at the testing site. What they
Oh,
said.
testing site, he passed.
Oh, he passed?
Without issue, yeah. You can do that, but again, they're going to want to know that you know what you're talking about.
Okay.
All right. So here's a slack adjuster push rod. All right. Slack adjuster, push rod, clevis and cotter pins, right? So that's what they're talking about, that 90-degree angle. Okay? What that does is that opens and closes as you press on the brake pedal, as it pushes the brake drums or the brake pads up. Okay? So that's what you're talking about when you're talking about slack adjuster push rod. For some people, they need to see it to fully understand what it is, or they can memorize it. So, questions about that?
Is this the whole entire truck's inspection?
That was just the tractor. You would need to inspect this trailer as well, but we'll get into that next week. Again, I've given you more than enough to bite off on first day.
How much would you say of the inspection we just covered?
60%? 70%?
So we got another 40% to go.
Well, really, it's
It's
if
just
you
a-
know those axles there, you know the trailer axles. It's just, you're just repeating. The difference between this axle and the front drive axle, this one doesn't have U-bolts. That's it. The lights are exactly the same except for these three guys right here. These are clearance lights. It's got a tag light, right? Turn signal, four-way flasher, running lights, brake lights. Then you're gonna, all you really need to remember is you gotta add this bumper.
So you said it was brake lights and waiting lights?
Running lights, brake
Running
lights,
lights.
turn signal, four-way flasher.
Okay.
So these are the 5 functions, and the rest of them is 4.
Turn signal, four-way flasher,
And
running lights, brake lights.
lights, right? Yeah,
So
5
4.
functions.
So there's like 4
Turn
and
signal,
1?
four-way flasher, running lights, brake lights. 4.
So there's 4 and 1?
Yes. Well, 4 for these 4 functions for those 3 lights.
Okay. I remember on the sheet when I was talking about the front of the tractor, one of the things it was saying is that it was the 4-way flashers.
Yeah,
turning
that's that
signals.
multi-light, that first
That's
yellow
in the
light.
front. Okay, turning signals.
That first yellow light.
4-way
Yep,
flashers.
yep. So here you just talk about the bumper. My bumper is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not bent. All right. Got this DOT tape. Properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, damaged, or broken. It's not ripped or torn. It's clean and reflective. Reflective and covers 100% of my bumper. So really, once you know the tractor, you know the trailer. Trailer, the biggest hardest part about the trailer is going to be the coupling system. And we'll talk about that next week. Questions or comments about that?
This got to be a part of the pre-trip too, right? The top part, or no? No? Because they can see it, right?
They can see it, but you know,
Well,
on your regular inspection for your regular day, you're just going to check to make sure it has no holes,
Okay.
not tore up. But you don't have to mention it on your test. It's not mentioned.
Like we got a van, you got to mention the rivets.
Nope. Nope. You just talk about your side. You know, it's properly. There's no holes, nothing missing. Lights work.
What are you talking about? The van?
The van, well, because it has sides, so you have to talk about the sides. And they have the lights at the top, so you're going to talk about that. And you have doors. We'll have a couple different things you talk about in the van, but for you guys, it's the flatbed.
So I'll be trained on the flatbed.
You'll be trained on. Yeah,
I won't
John has
test on
a
the van.
flatbed as well, so
I won't test on the van.
you will not test. My students will test in this truck and trailer combination. John will have his truck and trailer, which is also a flatbed. They're identical trucks.
Even at the DMV, we'll test in this.
Yeah, they'll take this over to test.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Questions or comments about that?
So next week we'll do the rest of it.
Huh?
Next week, by what is this Friday? You want us to remember all 9 pages, right?
No. Will want you. I want you to know the motor compartment by Friday. The front, the entire motor compartment, through the tire, all the way up to that first multi-light. That's what I expect my students to know by Friday.
Okay. What's the multi-light? The multi-light that you were talking about?
Oh, that's just that right there underneath the door. That first yellow light right underneath the door.
Okay.
Cargo lights. Nope. Not on the back of the tractor. Nope. You will inspect it, of course of your norm, but it's not on the test.
All right.
It's not on the test. Just like you don't have to check the oil temp pressure, you know, the oil.
Color and all that.
Yeah, you don't have to pull the stick.
Alright.
You just talk about what you're inspecting. That's all they care about.
What you would be doing.
Yeah, what you're inspecting it for. What you're inspecting and what you're inspecting it for.
All right.
But no, you don't have to demonstrate that you know how to do it. Which to me seems
Will they
kinda
give us a
backwards.
stick?
No sticks. You have to be an instructor to get a stick.
It would be great to have a stick.
There are lots of sticks running around here. If you guys want a stick, that's fine. You won't need to touch anything. Like I said, you can just point. You know, most students just talk about. They go up to it and they go, coolant reservoir, properly mounted, secure. It's not cracked, damaged, or they just that's the way they do it. They just give it an initial point, and they're happy with that.
The gearbox. Do they want to know no missing bolts?
Nope. They just want to hear a gearbox, properly mounted, secure, not cracked, damaged, or broken, not leaking. You can talk about the bolts if you wish to. And again, it's got bolts, right? So it really can't be missing bolts. So if you add no missing bolts, well, that just goes along with this, right? It has no missing bolts. Goes with the alternator. Some of them talk about no missing bolts, and some of them do not. So if you add it, it's not going to hurt you.
This is steering you drop.
Yep, but we don't talk about that. Believe it or not, we don't talk about this shaft at all. The first thing we talk about is the reservoir, the hoses, and the
You sure
gearbox.
did mention the steering shaft, did you?
Huh?
You don't talk about it?
Don't talk about it. No. You'll inspect it. right? Because if it's bent to hell, it's
Yeah,
gonna be kind of
yeah,
hard to
yeah.
drive, right?
Yeah.
But it's not on the test. But
that's-
in Indiana, I have found they are kind of. I'm from Illinois. I moved over here to do this, and I'm just like, you guys are nuts. Things that they think are important that are not important, or important things that I think are important, they go, yeah, we don't care about that.
Yeah, Georgia actually asked for that.
Yeah.
Weird.
Marshfield, they asked for that. They asked for the coolant or the windshield wiper fluid. They do have more parts. They talk about the turbo, all kinds of stuff. We don't talk about the turbo on the Indiana test. Yet if your turbo goes out, you have zero power.
Yeah.
You know, it'll get up to speed sooner or later.
It might take you 5 hours.
It may take you a while depending on your
Put the
load.
four-way
but
flashers on.
yeah, it'll get there sooner or later.
So the only hoses you're going to talk about separately is the water pump and the
Low pressure.
high pressure. And
The brake lines.
brake lines. And then you can basically group all the other ones together.
Yes, sir.
Properly mounted and secure, not cracked, broken, or damaged. Not leaking. Not cut, frayed.
Cut, torn or frayed.
Cut, torn, or frayed. And it's properly secured.
Clamps at both ends. Yep. You guys are going to find out this is when we do the presentation, everybody freaks out. And then when they start doing it, they realize that this is not too bad. The biggest part, I had a student come from Georgia. When he came up here, he couldn't say properly mounted, secured, not cracked, broken down. For whatever reason, he just couldn't spew those words out. And that was the hard. He knew everything, but I basically just started saying, okay, every time you touch something now, I want to hear it's properly mounted, secured, not cracked, damaged, or broken. Because anytime I tested him, he would fumble those words. And so it got to the point where he'd pick up his coffee. Hey, what's your coffee? It's properly mounted, secured, it's not cracked, damaged, or broken, and I'm going to drink it.
Not leaking.
Yeah, just part of his accent and part of his, and he told me he had a speech problem early on in life that he had battled, so it was just a matter of getting him over that. So, he actually missed 4 on his pre-trip when he tested, so he did really well. Understand this, these guys, they don't want to fail you. They have no desire to fail you. They want you to succeed, but they have a job to do. So if you're doing your job, they're going to do theirs, and everybody's going to be happy. But they're not going to help you either, right? They can't do that. They can lose their license if they do. Okay, so just go out and just do what you can do. Okay. Again, it's not about being perfect.
The thing.